No, the difference. The difference, we're budgeting,
The difference in last year and this year.
yeah, and I assume that's just kind of a guess.
Should be live.
Okay, we'll open the March 27th, 2023 work session for budget discussion. Do a quick roll call. Mr. Lewis,
Present.
Mr. Day,
Here.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes,
Mr. Lyons.
Here.
And Supervisor McDaniel is present as well. Mr. Suter, you want to kick us off here?
Yes, sir. All right. So the Finance Committee has worked to close the gap. And the draft budget for FY24, for the FY24 budget recommendation is now balanced. The previous draft budget was a deficit of $659,677. The highlights of this recommendation include the following. First, there were no changes in the revenues except from reserves for capital projects, which was pre-planned. Changes were made to the amount of revenues needed for capital projects. Fund 272 capital construction was corrected to reflect only $139,532 needed for the Murat Collection Center, and it was down from $413,529. And that will be, I'm sorry, $413,529 will be carried over from the current year to next year. Also, $15,000 was added to replace the failing roof at the health department. The updated revenue or budget received from the regional jail is $2,291,173, and that was down $385,516 from the previous draft. Met with the jail commission, and there were a couple of major initiatives that were not approved, and that cut that number considerably. The Finance Committee is recommending funding some of the one-time requests from the current FY23 budget that came in that were requested in next year's budget. So they have been removed in this draft from next year's FY24 budget with the recommendations in the Finance Committee to fund them right now or in this fiscal year. Of those, $17,000 for RATs, it was a capital request. And the $15,000 annual contribution does remain. I just want to make sure you are aware of that in the FY24 budget. VAST, that's the new stretcher van group, $16,900 capital request. RARA has very recently requested $20,000 for their capital request for renovation of their facility. And Mountain Gateway Community College, $50,000 capital request toward their new training center in Buena Vista. Let's see, Finance Committee recommendation to fund the schools is $16,719,567. That is above $739,784 above the current fiscal year. And $76,616 has been added to contingencies for consideration of possible needs in the Treasurer's Office and Economic Development departments that were removed from the initial budget as the Finance Committee first went through. And that closed the gap. Gap is now zeroed out, the balanced budget. And those are the highlights, and I'd certainly defer to Supervisors Lewis and Lyons, and also Mr. Harrison for any further comment that you all have. It's spent a lot of time on the budget, and I did appreciate you all working hard on it.
Only thing I would add is for the VAST request, we look at the population served by these nonprofits, and while VAST won't necessarily touch huge numbers of people, it'll touch those who need it, and they did get the funds for the van itself. So we felt this was sort of a matching to those federal funds requests that we felt we could do. So I just wanted to give a little more background on that one, if anybody has any questions.
I mean, not against it. I just wondered, did we ever decide, wasn't the rats request for some sort of stretcher as well? And then vast,
The RATS request, they have received a grant and they're,
Also a grant.
and we're providing the matching funds for 2 new high top bands.
That's where some confusion could be, because it's the same kind of request. They had applied for grants, awarded them, and needed a little bit of match. Were awarded them, I should say.
and the school request, that's in order for 5%.
Well, I'd say at least, but they can do whatever. We can't say,
What was the point?
here's your 5%. If they want to give 5%, we believe they have the funds to do so.
Yeah, were you asking him? Well, yeah, that's all I'll say. Dan's right. We're not trying to dig into how they spend it, but as always, wish we could do more, but hopefully that should allow them to do what they needed to do.
Were you able to discuss that number with Dr. Thompson, just to see if it plug and play
I
works?
haven't had any questions.
I did call him today. The Finance Committee met this afternoon. I did call him, let him know that comment today.
I mean, I'm good with it, what the finance committee did. I'm just like to make sure that because there's so many different budgets and calc tools that the schools had, House, Senate, Governor, that, make sure that whatever one they end up with, it works.
Well, it'd be a lot easier if the state had done the job.
That's exactly what I was going to
You're
say.
right. There's 3 different calc tools and it's a range.
Okay.
So,
And that's, as you say, that's an unknown that we're dealing with here. But with this number, we could balance this budget. So we felt without the more knowns from the Commonwealth, what to do. So this is what we felt was best at this time. I would recommend.
What is the personal property rate we're going with?
so the state, was it 425?
425.
So we tried to keep that not all the way equalized either. So it's less.
At 35 instead of 36%.
Right. Yep.
Mr. Day, Ms. Ayers, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Having, been a part of the finance committee for 2 years, I know the pain and the struggle, and I certainly appreciate Mr. Lewis and Mr. Lyons for their work on that. Mr. Suter, Mr. Harrison, everyone involved to get to this point so that we have at this point, a balanced budget is a great deal of success, and I appreciate all that everyone has done to work to that.
I guess one more thought, fleshing this out, the last statement there about the treasurer and the economic development, there were positions requested there. And to balance the budget, we couldn't do the whole year of those positions, but logically thinking that through, I'm not sure that even if we approved them, they'd be up and running by July. So we've sort of set a January date or October or November. The funds should be there. If all that comes to fruition, we're going to have a new treasurer. We don't know how that department, would be managed. So but if they need it, the funds will be there for half the year. And a continued focus on economic development. That's the piece I want to say is support that. The director is working hard, and that was the next step, was to, flesh out that department. So again, we support that. We just couldn't do the whole year. Well, we thought it would be best not to do the whole year to balance it. So, but it's in the works. So Ms. Flint, keep that moving forward.
The board had originally in their schedule of the budget process had a meeting scheduled for next Monday, April the 3rd, to discuss budget. Having said that, if we're at a balanced budget at this point and everyone is satisfied with the numbers that have been discussed and what we're doing, I'm not sure that we need to meet on April the 3rd, and we can just do our approval to advertise at our April 10th regular meeting, unless the finance committee or county administration deems it necessary to meet.
Is there a cancellation? We don't, how much notice needs to be provided for cancellation?
Same as, well,
Is
same
it,
as any other. 3 days. I mean, if it gets canceled, you just cancel. It's kind of a,
But what could we
The courtesy.
imagine we would need if the state comes back
Yeah, that's what-
magically
yeah,
with,
yeah.
with the numbers, would it help at all? If they,
Well, they can't because they don't even meet until.
I don't think they're
believe
going
it.
back to the 12th or
Yeah.
13th.
okay, so no, so there's nothing.
I know, I just like to examine what all the options
Uh-huh.
are to see we don't.
I'll be in Houston, so it'd have to be by phone and it'd be
Remote.
early.
Yeah, I won't be, I won't be available next week either. So it's up to the board. Do you want to meet on Monday or do you want to just wait till the following Monday?
I certainly feel we've had enough meetings on the budget, but I don't want to take away anybody else's opportunity.
Obviously, you and Mr. Lyons are knee deep in it, but Mr. Day, Ms. Harris, do you feel a need to meet next Monday?
You're gonna give us the checkbook? Is that what? No, I'm fine, thank you.
No, I don't believe so.
All right, can we just post notice that we'll cancel the April 3rd meeting and we'll revisit it on April 10th?
sure.
All right. One more thing to do with, sort of to do with budget, but while we're here, I want to talk about it. As you know, we had previously approved up to $9 million for the school bond sale that's supposed to take place in the spring for the Innovation Center at the high school. At this point, the schools don't have they have an estimated number, but they don't have a true number from their firm that they're working with. I believe Dr. Thompson is pressing them to try to get a more firm and stable number by the end of this week. The issue is that for the spring bond sale, the date that we have to decide on that is April the 4th. All throughout the process, we have been firm with our number, the schools have been firm with their number, but you don't know what the bids are going to come in at, and you won't know until the end of June. So me and Mr. Suter had been talking, if as long as it comes in at $8 million, because we had built in a cushion of $1 million for our cost and the bond sale and everything like that. As long as it comes in $8 million, we're good to go. The problem is, or below, $8 million or below, we're good to go. The problem is if that bid comes in at 13 or 14 or 15 million, we've only borrowed 9. And there is no, you can't prepay it, just give it back. You're stuck with it, and you got to decide either A, you got to cut a bunch of stuff out of the proposal, or B, you got to go back and file and borrow more money. So
But you have to move forward with the project.
you have to move forward the project. So what we had talked about was
If you borrow,
if
we borrow it.
Yeah.
And that is worrisome to me in that it's like tearing down a building and you have go
Yeah.
forward and you're basically saying, sky's the limit, we have to do it. So I'm really uncomfortable with that.
Well, we're not going to have another meeting. You know, again, the schools are trying to get a number by the end of this week, but we're not going to meet. So what we had talked about is possibly the board, okay, and us, the county administrator and me, to look at that number. And if it's way out of whack, to not go forward with the spring bond sale, to wait till fall to do the bond sale. Having said that, you know, we're going to have to decide what needs to be done, because this project, in order for it to be ready to go by next August, it's going to have to start in July. So we may have to front load some of the costs out of our reserves until the fall bond sale will come through. Just,
Well, and the other thing, I think the schools might need to become more flexible and face reality. It's not going to be ready by next August. It might be next December, because if you tell a contractor you've got to be ready to break ground June 1 and you're not even giving them the bid package till May, you're going to pay for that. And you're going to pay a lot for that. Whereas if you give them the normal amount of time once they're awarded the bid to work the project in. I mean, the schools have a program worked out of what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So they won't have to change any of that if they push it out a little bit.
It's just, is there not a C potentially of, if anything comes over, could we pay cash for some of that if the appetite was there instead of borrowing?
yeah, I mean, that would be a board
There
decision.
must be a price tag that we might not be willing to, I just don't think that we can go forward with a project if we
Don't know what it's.
don't know what it costs.
It's
I
like
mean,
giving the
you just
contractor
can't.
a blank check. If they say, oh God, they've already borrowed 9 million, they gotta go through, so.
So you're talking about taking money out of reserves to front the
To
project.
start the
gets-
project
yeah.
before the bond, before the fall
Before the
bond.
fall bond sale, because fall bond sale is not until end of September timeframe.
So how much money do you think we,
I don't think anybody knows. I think that's. the
You do a reimbursement,
yeah,
you
but,
extend the reimbursement
you
resolution.
know, are we talking about $2 or $3 million or?
That's what we don't know. And again, just to be clear, we're getting a new high level estimate. So it's not the bid, obviously. You're not gonna know what the cost is until the bids actually come in, but you get as good an estimate as you can to know how much you need to borrow. And I mean, I think schools are working on a number that's pretty dated.
Well, but we could have an option 3. Let's say the schools tell us, you know, they think it might be $11 million. If we put off and the bids come in at $11 million, we can take 2 million out of reserve and still only borrow 9 in the fall.
That's what I was,
Yeah.
suggesting.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is I would much rather put it off until the fall to give us the most flexibility. I feel like we have more flexibility, and I think taking that now means you're stuck with whatever someone presents to you.
The firm that they're using, I mean, they're a well-established firm.
The same one they did Moy River.
Yeah,
correct?
but they've been doing this for a long time. So they should know, based off of today, what supplies, materials, everything like that's gonna cost, what type of time duration. They should have a good idea of what type of bid is going to come through. But we don't know that information as of right now. And we won't know it until Thursday or Friday. Again, the board is not going to meet before the drop date for the spring bond sale. That's why we were thinking if we could get consensus from the board to look at that number and then decide should we move forward or not? If it comes in at $8 million, there's really no reason not
Yeah,
to
but
move
again,
forward.
that's not the bid.
Right. It's
That's
not
just
the
an
bid.
estimate.
Right.
But if we wait till the fall, we would have the actual bid.
And
That
probably a
information.
higher interest rate too. You gotta
Do
project
you
that.
think?
Dan, you were talking about if you come in 11, to take 2 from reserves and still get the 9. How do we replace the 2 million we take out of reserves, or do we not?
Well, we have a significant unencumbered reserve.
Yeah.
And we add to it each year. So if, I'm thinking you wouldn't replace it all at one time, but is it better to borrow? Or, how much money is that reserve making us? I suppose how much
No.
would be putting out?
Actually, we budgeted for it, haven't we?
But is that number that the school gets on Thursday public information?
I don't know. I mean, I guess if it's an email, if it's a phone call, it, gotta be public if it's sent an email, but,
My concern is if they call and say, we think it's gonna be about $11 million, I guarantee you're not gonna get any bids for under that.
Yeah.
And they may go over, but they're not.
And this is not in any way, in case any school board members watch it, I think we as supervisors, we're committed to doing this project.
Sure.
It's just,
We're just trying to figure out the best path
Exactly.
for the finances, which is why I was suggesting, some amount of reserves isn't necessarily a bad thing. Certainly if that keeps the interest rate lower.
But we have to, I mean, there is a possibility where the number is higher than we have committed. I just think that I don't think that we can commit to the project until we know what the price tag actually is, even though we are committed to the project. I don't know how you commit to a project that could potentially be, but we don't know what it is. We're all sitting here saying we don't know what it is. And so I think that we can't do that.
To answer Chairman McDaniel's question after the discussion from my perspective, yes, I'm fine with you and the county administrator working on that for all the reasons that, like Ms. Ayers just said, I said, I mean, we've got to come up with a plan, but the speed at which that needs to work, I think and as flexible as we can be, I think you all we can handle that. And as conservative as Mr. Suter is, I don't think he's going to put us in a position that will be a problem.
well, and it probably will end up, just as Ms. Ayers said, a fall bond sale. It's just the board has to understand that you're going to have to front some of the costs if they start in July.
Sure.
Because the bond will not take place until September. So, and we can get reimbursed for it, but you're going to have about 2 or 3 months there that you're going to have to front the cost for out of our reserve.
Which isn't the whole project amount anyway,
No.
to be clear, right?
Yeah.
So,
the idea is to size the borrowing as accurately as you can, knowing that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be a little bit more, a little bit less. But in this particular case, I've just gotten a feeling that it may be a fair amount more. Is when they come back, just from discussions with this, and the fact that it's some of these estimates were pre-COVID.
keep us in the loop.
Does anybody have any issue with?
No.
Concern?
Just like a phone call once you decide, or
Yeah. We'll definitely keep everybody in the loop. Is there anything else with budget or anything, Mr. Suter? You have anything, Mr. Harrison?
No, except I've really enjoyed the spirited but congenial meetings.
That's a good way to put it.
Dan didn't bring the boxing gloves from the boxing.
Spirited and congenial.
Ashton and Mr. Suter were calm the whole time.
We knew who they
Well, y'all
were
didn't do a very
referring
good
to. He
job
was
then.
referring to.
As I said, I know it's a difficult process, a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of meeting, a lot of
Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah, there's just a lot that goes into that, you know, a lot of people just don't see. So I'm very appreciative
The bottle in my desk.
of everybody involved. All right, do we need a motion to close the work session?
No, but we can take a 2-minute recess, can we?
Yeah, all right, so we'll close the work session and reconvene here in just a minute. You got everything? You're
Ready.
ready to go?
You're live.
All right, we will call the March 27th, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As far as the roll call, Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day.
Here.
Supervisor Ayers.
Here.
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
And Supervisor McDaniel's here as well. We will now have a prayer for the board, followed by a pledge of allegiance. Those attending and not required to participate, if you'd like to join us, please stand.
Lord, as we gather here, pray for our nation, for those in sorrow, for those that are hurting and need comfort and comfort that can come from you alone. And now I pray that you will guide us in decisions that we make here this afternoon. Forgive us our sins. Thank you for hearing and answering our prayers. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We'll do our best to take citizen comment remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. To join by telephone, you may dial into the number listed on the county website. The webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you are calling in by telephone. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
No, sir.
All right, next up we have, as far as a recognition or presentation, we have National Public Health Week proclamation. Ms. Ayers?
Yes. Central Shenandoah Health District National Public Health Week proclamation. Whereas the President of the United States traditionally designates the first full week of April as National Public Health Week, and whereas National Public Health Week is scheduled for April 3rd to the 9th, 2023, and the theme is centering and celebrating cultures in health. And whereas since 1995, the American Public Health Association, through its sponsorship of National Public Health Week, has educated the public, policymakers, and public health professionals about issues important to improving the public's health. And whereas the Central Shenandoah Health District's mission is to protect and promote the health and well-being of residents in the Central Shenandoah Valley. And whereas the Central Shenandoah Health District serves the counties of Augusta, Bath, Highland, Rockbridge, Rockingham, and the cities of Buena Vista, Harrisonburg, and Lexington, Stanton, and Waynesboro, with an estimated combined population of 308,875 citizens. And whereas the Central Shenandoah Health District's public health professionals help our communities prevent, prepare for, withstand, and recover from the impact of a full range of health threats, including disease, outbreaks such as the COVID-19 pandemic, natural disasters, and disasters caused by human activity. And whereas the Central Shenandoah Health District's public health professionals have and continue to display an unprecedented commitment to serve our communities in response to an estimated 100,306 drug overdose deaths in the United States during the 12-month period, the highest level ever recorded during a 12-month period. And this was an increase of 28.5% from the 78,000 deaths during the same period the year before. Now, therefore, we, the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors, call upon all citizens of Rockbridge County to observe the week of April 3rd through the 9th as National Public Health Week, during which our residents may join in celebrating the dedication of our public health professionals, past and present, and their families whose support allows them to serve our communities. Adopted this 27th day of March, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Ayers. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation? So moved. And a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis? And Chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have citizen comments. Is there anyone signed up?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just want to acknowledge two young men in the back from Boy Scout Troop 5, Mr. Trey Lewis, Mr. Parker Zalman, who are here to audit the meeting and hopefully earn their next merit badge.
Well, good.
Welcome.
Welcome. Congratulations. Citizen comments. Anyone signed up wishing to address the board?
No, sir.
Is there anyone online wishing to address the board?
No, sir.
Is there anyone present and have the opportunity to sign up wishing to address the board? All right. Moving on. Next up, we have the consideration of school appropriation resolution. Mr. Harrison?
Yes, for Fund 50, the school operations, they've received $654,145 in new grants, which needs to be appropriated.
Is there any questions for Mr. Harrison? A motion to approve the resolution? A second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have the county appropriation resolution, Mr. Harrison.
Yes, I want to thank the board again for allowing us to do this second one. It's more abbreviated than the in-depth finance report. That's going to help expedite things. We've received 110,072 is needed for general fund new appropriations related to grants, both from the sheriff's office and for economic development. And our total bi-monthly bills is $208,530.89.
Is there any questions for Mr. Harrison on that? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution? Second,
Second.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have consideration of South River Volunteer Fire Department outdoor event application for a tractor pull. Mr. Suter.
Yes, in 2017 and 2018, the board approved tractor pulls sponsored by the South River Volunteer Fire Department at the Virginia Horse Center as a fundraiser. They are here again requesting to hold an event on May the 6th, 2023, and have submitted the correct outdoor event application. As the tractor pulls are within the leased area, the area leased by the county from the Virginia Horse Center, so they will need require a license agreement to do this. Both the application and the license agreement are attached in your package. The application includes approval of a parking, crowd control, and traffic control plan approved by the Sheriff's Department, and a fire protection plan approved by the Department of Fire and Rescue. The license agreement also requires the county be named as an additional insured on the South River Certificate of Insurance. And we didn't have that at the time of the posting, and I'm not sure if John brought that tonight or not, but that would be a requirement of this. The Virginia Horse Center has been consulted in the planning of this event and is in support. And South River Volunteer Fire Department President, John Jennings, I put Assistant Chief in there, John. I don't know whether I promoted you or demoted you. But he's the president of the department, is present this evening to answer any questions that the board might have. And John, if you just want to come up and see if they've got any.
First of all, thank you for your service to our community. Appreciate all that you do. Board, do you have any questions for Mr. Denny? Is there anything you'd like to say about the tractor pull?
I think Spencer summed it up. It's one of our it is our biggest fundraiser, just looking for to bring this thing back. We hadn't had it since pre-COVID, and to try to bring it back, once a year to have something, fun for the people that can do. And like I say, our biggest fundraiser.
I did have a question. Will there be concessions?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Don't have to eat before you come then.
No, we'll have food.
I will note too that the past two events, they've coordinated well with the neighbors, and John assured me that he's talking to the neighbors again this time, and they seem to have gone off really well the last two times, with the exception of one time you had some rain.
Good. We certainly appreciate it and wish you the best of luck at it.
Thanks for putting it on.
Is there I just have one quick question for Mr. Suter. I noticed in here the parking, crowd control and all like that approved by the sheriff. I don't remember seeing that in all of our, is that something new or what is that?
We've actually started following what we're supposed to be following. That we created Mr. Sladen and Ms. Huffman did the yeoman's work on it, actually making it easier for someone to apply. And what we did was we went by the actual code, which requires that. Okay. Yeah, approval.
That's just one of a list of like 8 or 9 items that are required to be completed for these applications. Most of those requirements, including the one you're questioning, goes back to 1970.
Okay.
So I had a conversation today with the sheriff about potential amendment and alternatives, and maybe need to discuss any other changes that need to be made to that section.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve the application?
So moved.
All right, we will go with Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyon,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. Best of luck to you. Hope you have a good fundraiser. Next up, we have the consideration of the RARO request to use the downstairs space at the Rivermont School. I believe this is Mr. Suter.
Yes, so included in your package is a letter of request from the Rockbridge Area Recreation Association, or RARO, which seeks to utilize the lower level of the former Rockbridge Middle School for RARO programming. As you may recall, the county transferred the buildings to Central Health for use as the Rivermont Alternative Education School back in 2016. And the school has since been transferred to RMS Holding based in Lynchburg, or the ownership has been transferred. During the transfer in 2016, the county did retain a 50-year lease on the lower level of the school. The lease document and performance agreement are included in your package as exhibits, and the lease specifies that the lower level can be used for a variety of activities, including recreation. The lease also provides for reasonable parking as well. Heretofore, the Rockbridge County Recreation Department has, and again, that's separate from RALRO, our department internally, has utilized some of the space as a North County office. And the county's intent at the time was, in addition to getting the facility back into beneficial use, keep options open for the use of the lower level, potentially to be used in concert with athletic fields and the shop building, which stayed under county ownership. In addition, under the agreements with Central Health, the county maintains certain use rights for the gymnasium on the main floor upstairs. Copies of the executed performance agreement, again, lease agreement, are attached for you to take a look at. RALRO's been utilizing the baseball, softball field, and also the gym, and I think maybe even the fields up on top to some. At this point, and as noted in the attached letter, they would like to utilize the lower level. The purpose of this report is to introduce the concept to the board and see if there's concurrence to allow such use. If there is, staff would return to the board with a sublease document for consideration of approval. Obviously, that document also require execution by RALRO. And RALRO's Executive Director, Chad Coffey, is here to discuss the request and answer any questions that you might have on the request.
Mr. Coffey, you want to come up and add to anything Mr. Suter just?
I think the letter and what he said kind of sums it up, but we're just looking to utilize particularly the old cafeteria space. It's a large enough space for us to be able to do some additional, I wouldn't call it additional programming, but add on to kind of supplement our programming that we currently do. We're looking at it as a baseball, softball, possibly put a cage and kind of an indoor spot. It's raining, we can move practices too. And then also one of the issues we've had with programming over the last couple of years, or in the last year and a 2 seasons for the winter, is wrestling. Having a location to be able to hold our wrestling. We've kind of had to search. It's worked out both seasons, but this would obviously space would serve well for that. Kind of shore up some needs as it relates to our program.
I sit on the RALRO board, and I want to first thank Chad for doing such a great job for us and expanding our programming, not only new programming, but also adding to our numbers. And wrestling is one that has quite a bit of potential. And we would really love to see that building used to its most potential for our children. And we also, my feeling is that the more locations we have around the county, the more kids that we can reach, and more families and adults, because some of this is adult program. As I saw Mr. Lyons, a picture of Mr. Lyons at the Vermont there. So anyway, I wanted to thank you and Thank you, gentlemen, for considering this.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Coffey? Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Appreciate you being here. Don't believe there is actually a vote. You're looking for consensus to return to a future meeting with some sort of sublease?
Yes, sir.
Is that okay with everyone on board? Anyone have any objections to that?
The only thing I would consider is that I think the space needs to be used and should be used, and this is a good use. As things change, either for the railroad organization or the county, I don't know what that sublease would look like other than, some agreement to, for either person, obviously to dissolve or request something else, work together. But if something else presents itself, I'd like to be able to have some flexibility for the county.
I think our thought would be is that we put in a reasonable out time, so nobody's left high and dry on one way or the other. For example, if there was a too good to be true economic development type of situation that came along, we'd probably have to help railroad find another facility.
That's exactly the kind of thing I'm thinking. And I don't think that's anything but reality. It's no reflection on railroad or anything. It's what's best for all the taxpayers.
Who is or would be responsible for any maintenance? When the baseball goes through the window.
Well, I think,
I think we'd take care of that.
yeah, I think railroad would have to take care of that as part of the sublease. But the owners of the building are responsible for the main plumbing and that type of stuff. I think we are keep the demise premises in a neat and orderly fashion. So that would and I think the language, and of course I defer as always to Ms. Huffman, but I think the language right out of the lease of our lease would need to be put into the sublease, or maybe even as an attachment. So an exhibit.
Any other questions? Coming? All right, you have consensus to move forward with that. Bring back those other future meetings. Next up, we have consideration of personnel policy update. Ms. Hope, I believe.
Good evening, everyone. Since the transition of the payroll responsibilities occurred last fall, the HR office and the accounting offices have been working together to update some of our policies and procedures. There are two potential areas of opportunity listed here for the usage and the accrual of annual leave and sick leave. The first one being usage. Current county policy requires that employees use leave in 1 hour increments. In some situations, this causes an employee to miss more work time than is necessary or increases payroll workload to correct the balances when leave is used incorrectly. Proposed policy change would allow employees to use annual and sick leave in 15-minute increments. The second one is for the actual accrual of leave. We accrue leave on the last working day of the month according to current county policy. And the proposed change would be to accrue our leave on half increments for each pay period, so that employees are receiving that sooner, and it eliminates the need for the manual on-off accrual process that occurs in our payroll system now. So eliminates some of the potential for error. The payroll software currently has features to accommodate these proposed changes, and staff is prepared to implement with minimal impacts to workload. A copy of the suggested edits and amendments to the existing personnel policy section is attached, as well as a resolution to adopt the changes should the board agree with the staff's recommendation.
Board have any questions, comments, concerns from Ms. Hope?
So the employees now punch a time clock?
Time sheets, it's manual. time entry, especially for non-exempt employees where we are tracking
Right.
their time.
So is there any thought to making this electronic?
Well, it's an electronic timesheet, but we don't have a timekeeping system, if that makes sense.
Would you like to do
I know you
it?
can.
No, that's part of the
RFP.
RFP
new
for the
software.
municipal software. And the idea is that we've been kind of looking at doing this for years, and we just didn't want to go out and get a standalone and pay for a standalone if it was going to be incorporated into a software.
And has any consideration been given to just switching to paid time off rather than separating? That seems to be a trend. Instead of having sick leave and annual leave, you get paid time off.
We have had those conversations. It's not for a while. We've had so many other transitions going on that we have kind of tabled that for.
That we had some lengthy discussions about that back some years ago, especially when we were doing the personnel policy manual update and review, and we ended up keeping what we had for now, but that serious consideration for the future at some point possible.
I noticed in the comments, the accrual of sick time, does that go along with VRS standards, or like if someone retires, they get paid for unused hours? Is that like a VRS issue, or is that our issue?
No, it's our policy.
Yeah, I agree with, Dr. Lyons. You may have looked at it in the past, may not have worked, but probably a good time to take another look at it. May not work now, but just going to straight PTO for all time off to consider. In the 15 minutes, I understand, someone's running a few minutes late or needs to leave a few minutes. I get that, I understand completely, but we're not going to be scheduling for 15 minutes off, are we? I mean, that seems a little unrealistic, to try to, for the other employees in the department. I mean, if someone's going to take time off, it seems like to me it should be probably in half day or full day increments so the department can plan on it.
For example, like if someone were to have a dentist appointment and they expect to be out an hour, but it really took them an hour and 15 minutes, incentivizes them to come back instead of wait another hour to come back to work.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments?
I just had the same thought that David was at initially. I just wasn't sure, but this is what you're telling us you need.
But it makes more sense now that you hear the explanation. You don't say, oh, I need 15 minutes of vacation tomorrow.
No, just the increments.
But,
is what
yeah.
she's after.
But if you have a doctor's appointment and you have to take an hour minimum and the appointment lasts an hour and 5 minutes, you could be back to work and you're more productive rather than say, oh, well, you got to take at least another hour. So I feel better after hearing that explanation.
Okay. If there's no other questions, is there a motion to approve the update?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
All right. Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lyon?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And Chair votes yes for taking us over.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have some appointments coming due, Social Services Board of Directors and Economic Development Authority. At the last meeting, I believe there were some board members that had people who were looking for applications. Any update on that?
I had not, with the budget season, I just hadn't had time to focus, honestly. But so I haven't had time to go back to the folks who were saying they wanted to apply, who obviously haven't yet, or Randy would have sent it. So, it can go either way, but with, what's not on here is, 2 other positions for the community services. So there's a lot in flux. So I'm still just nervous about it. about just getting it all straight in my head. I know there was, one of the things for me was some concern, and it's not here yet. So these may be able to be handled, but the community services, the structure of that board. I think it's all fine, but I wasn't sure about reading it initially, the elected official needing to be on there and the county administrator, but I think maybe those are can have designees. So I'm not sure that we're out of whack, but that's just my own personal ramblings on the subject at the moment. I'm just not quite there.
Well,
But
that's like the EDA board. It's been brought to my attention that no one from my district serves on that.
that's, yeah, something I will think that's maybe required for that one, but as you know, I certainly advocate for everybody having a representative.
Y'all think we can continue these for another month?
Well, I'd like to say for the Social Service Board, Ms. Watkins has done a fine job and she's willing to continue that. We go ahead and approve that. It expires the end of the month.
I agree.
So I'll make that a motion.
That's a motion.
Now, second?
Second. Any other discussion on, no, this is just looking at social services, Ms. Watkins, term is up 3/31. All right,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons, Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
And chair votes yes as well. Thank you, Ms. Watkins, for serving. The Economic Development Authority, I believe that Mr. Lewis is correct. It's not necessarily per se by district, but we try to have equal representation across our county for various boards and different things. So, Mr. Day, your point is well taken. If it suits the board, I would say that we hold off on this until our next meeting and look at possible applicants and stuff like that.
And keep in mind, there's some districts that have 2 representatives and South River has none.
Does that suit the board to wait on that one? Okay.
There you got 2 weeks to round one up.
All right. It's now 6 o'clock. Up next for our public hearing, we have Kenneth Watkins of Cave Mountain Mini Storage, 1467 Work Faulkner Highway, Natural Station, Virginia. Application for a special exception permit, storage business in the general business B1 zoning district. Mr. Slayton?
That is correct. I've just started sharing my screen as the GIS. With that, Kenneth A. Watkins, his address is 64 Skiller Mountain Lane, Natural Bridge Station, 24579, has made an application for a special exception to permit and operate a storage business in the general business B1 zoning district. The property is identified as 1467 Wolf Faulkner Highway, Natural Bridge Station, 24579, and is currently owned by Judith Lawhead. So here in magenta, the Lawhead property is outlined. And of course, you can see in the south portion of the building is the existing building identified as 1467. Per the enclosed plan, the property is located in the general business zoning district B1 per section 605.03-12 of the County of Rockbridge Land Development Regulations. A wholesale business, storage, or warehouse business is a use by special exception in the B1 zoning district. Per the enclosed plans, Mr. Watkins is planning on constructing a 12 by 75 freestanding storage building on the north side of Low Bottom Lane, which would be approximately in this area, with Low Bottom Lane traveling towards the east this way. The freestanding building would be going, it's proposed to go there. The addition to the freestanding storage building, this area is proposed to be utilized as a camper / RV storage. Portion of the existing building, again, 1467 Wolf Faulkner, will be converted to the storage business with, I think, 12 total units in the actual existing building. The remaining portion of the building will be used as an office for the mini storage facility, office space for his existing construction business, and potentially an office space for an RV/service repair business. The existing warehouse east of the 1467 building, which identifies as this gray building here, will house the repair business. The office spaces in the repair business are permitted uses in the B1 zoning district. The application for the special exception only pertains to the mini storage business. On March 8th, 2023, the Planning Commission held its public hearing and has recommended approval of the special exception permit with the following conditions. Most stop share. Number one, substantial compliance with the schematic plan showing the location of the proposed freestanding storage facility titled Cave Mountain Mini Storage dated February 17th, 2023, and revised on March 10th, 2023. That plan is included in your package. Number two, a minimum of a 20-foot buffer on tax map number 108A-1-25-1 between the proposed freestanding storage facility and the property to the east, currently owned by James B. McFadden. Mr. McFadden's property is further identified as 108A1-1-24-47. And number three, final condition recommended as per the Planning Commission, of approval contingent on County Building Department, Virginia Department of Transportation, and Health Department and/or Public Service Authority approvals. With that, I'd like to turn over the floor to the applicant, Mr. Kenny Watkins, to answer any questions the board have or add any additional details.
How y'all doing today? Good. All this is kind of new to me. I'm usually the one that's building it or tearing it down or whatnot. But Chris pretty much went over everything.
Okay. Anything you need to add to his presentation or?
No, I don't guess. The building is really too big for what I wanted it for. So the store part, I know you've been in it a dozen times. I'm gonna make many storages inside of that. And then the part where Mr. Law had his office at, I'm gonna use for the office stuff. And the camper business, I'm hoping to have up and going by the end of next year. That's something that probably won't happen this year because with me in the construction business and the shape of that old building, it's going to take me a year to get it to where I want it at. But the mini storage things, I'm going to try to jump on pretty quick and just to start getting a little income on something.
What type of plans do you have for the exterior of the building?
I'm going to put the exterior of the building back just about the way it is. I done already tore down the awning on the work Faulkner side.
Yep.
I'm going to change it some. It had a couple windows in the top of it. And I think it was Pradnowski, I believe was the last one. They the ones put the big awning on it. So the one side of the building, I'm going to lower the awnings and open those two windows back up.
Okay.
The front is going to stay exactly the way it is. It's not really as bad as it looks. You know, it's just everything's going to start coming apart and loose, whatnot. I think I can save the original siding. We'll paint that, you know, touch up new fascia boards. Anything rotten, I got to replace. The back side of the building is probably the worst, and I'm planning on buying it.
I noticed the soft or the side of the building next to work partner, the awning, you know, had come down.
Yeah.
Appreciate, you know, that building is right there on the main highway. You know, anybody coming in or out of Natural Station drives by it. Appreciate the work you're putting into it and making it back to what it once was. You know,
Thank you very much.
time and weather and stuff like that's taking its toll on that building. It needs a little care.
The one storage unit that Chris was talking about, I don't really want it there. What I want to do, and it's I got to do a whole lot of groundwork, and then I guess come back to that. But there is, if you can remember, in the parking lot, there is a freestanding building already there that's 16 by 45. And what I like to do is tear it down and put that freestanding building right there. I need 35 more foot. And Chris and I's done been over it 100 times. There's a discrepancy with a couple of those little triangle lots at the end of it. And I'm gonna have to get a survey done on that. I think the setbacks and everything off of the road is still fine. But one of the reasons why I want to put it up there is there's a buffer, you know, for folks like you was talking about coming down the road and whatnot. If I build a nice, neat looking building right there, then they won't be able to look back over into the back lots where I'm gonna, hopefully my camper business does okay. And I'm gonna have it full of campers and, you know, some construction stuff's gonna be in there also. But if I could put it there, then that front parking lot would pretty much be, go in the front of the building for the inside storage and 10 more right there. And that would give me 20 storage units. And I don't want them.
Anybody have any
So I got a
questions?
lot of work to do to get there.
Thank you. Any questions from Ms. White? Thank you, Ms. White. We appreciate your information. At this point, we're having a public hearing. Is anybody signed up to address the board?
No one has signed up.
Is there anyone online wishing to address the board?
No, sir.
And anyone present didn't have the opportunity to sign up wishing to address the board? All right, at this point, we'll close the public hearing. Any board discussion? Anybody have any comments, questions? Mr. Slate, I understand what Mr. Watkins was talking about, but that's not, that front building is not part of this that we're voting on tonight.
That's
right?
correct. Let me share my screen real quick. I'll make it brief.
I understand what Mr. Watkins is talking about, and I understand what he's trying to do. I just didn't want to cloud anybody's judgment when they're taking a vote on what.
That's correct. The building he's referring to, the existing building he's referring to is here. We have it mapped in an alley. And so, you know, obviously with the landowner signing it, it was problematic to a septic application that shows on that alley. So as Mr. Watkins reported, you know, hopefully with some surveying work, with some schematic site plan, that type of thing, we can potentially be back.
Can you bring that map
Of course.
back up?
Yes, sir.
Just had a question for you, and I know it's general, but you know, as it appears there, the building is over the lines.
We are hoping that is also somewhat incorrect on that one, but yes.
Okay.
Of course, that building has been there, the original building, the 1467 has been there for quite some time. I think even before Ward Faulkner went in front of it, if you will. So the confidence level, of course, we're not changing the footprint there either. So that's a large part of the discussion as well.
Okay.
But
Right.
yes, I would be fairly confident that these lots are smaller than what are in reality, but that will be unearthed with any surveying work he does as well.
All right, good.
That's not a problem now because we're not changing the footprint.
No, I was just wondering if it was, I was just wondering why. I hadn't seen that before on some of your drawings you put up. The other thing with that map was, you know, where the parking lot is, it didn't appear to be any lots. There was a gap in between the lots there, and I didn't know about that.
I apologize, I'm jumping around on you, but let me put this back up. So these are the lots. These are all of the lots highlighted in magenta that Miss Lawhead owns. With that being said, the storage, the ones you may notice on the public hearing notice, it did not include all of them because the storage business was on a portion of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have going on is West Low Bottom is a public road that's in an existing paper street. And so that's exactly what this theoretically is as well. It is a paper street going due north, due south. And we've talked about, to Mr. Watkins, we've talked about the process, if you will, of formally closing down, going through the public hearing process, the very public process of potentially closing down the northwest, I'm sorry, the north-south direction. Obviously, you're not closing down West Low Bottom Lane.
Yeah.
That's a public road.
Okay, all right, good enough. Thank you, Mr. Slade. Is there a motion to approve the request?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And Chair votes yes as well. Thank you, Mr. Watkins. wish you success there and appreciate you helping out the community. Next up, we have County of Rockbridge, application for zoning text amendment to provide for upper and or lower story apartment condominiums as permitted in use in the general business B1 zoning district. Mr. Slayton?
Yes, as y'all know, the zoning text amendments can be initiated by motion of the planning commission or by a resolution with a statement of intent, I believe it is, by the board of supervisors. Early January, maybe December, I sent out an email with a citizen in Rockbridge County that owns property in the business zone. It's a 3-story building with the main level being business, and then the basement level previously being utilized as business, and the upper story is currently apartment buildings. Currently with his desire was to convert the lower portion, the basement level, into apartment complexes. However, currently per section 605.03-24 of the Rockbridge County Land Development Regulations, quote, upper story apartments / condominiums are used by special exception. With that defining upper story and upper story only, the current language does not provide flexibility to allow for additional dwelling units on the lower floors. At the January, sent that email out, as I always do, of a potential zoning text amendment that initiated some conversation, and the chairman of the planning commission directed staff to put it on the January 11th, 2023 planning commission meeting. So at that time, the planning commission discussed it. They thought it was some merit to proceeding with some researching on what other localities are doing. And asked us to come back at the next meeting with some additional information. At the February 8th, 2023 meeting, the commission reviewed staff findings and instructed staff to draft language and advertise for a public hearing for a zoning text amendment that provides for upper and or lower stories, comma, or parentheses, basement, story apartments, condominiums as a permitted use in the B1 district, provided at minimum 90% of the street level is in a business use. So let me back up a little bit. So what the planning commission has done currently, it's a use by special exception in the business zone. So the current draft as in your ordinance removes it as a special exception and provides it as a permitted use. And so obviously we would not be going through a special exception to convert a lower story or upper story into apartments in the business zone. At the March 8th, 2023 meeting, the planning commission held its public hearing and has recommended approval of the zoning text amendment as it stands in your board docs.
So with at a minimum 90% of the ground level, if you could convert basement into apartments or condominiums, but the ground level would need to remain business use.
And that has been modified. The ground level has been modified to street level in the actual ordinance, but that is correct. It is, as long as the ground level, the street level is at 90% as a business use, then the upper story and or lower story could be converted into apartments as a permitted use. Now, there's some other underlying conditions that have to be met, and that's off-street parking would be one of them. The required acreage associated with each unit. There's a ratio that requires certain amount of square footage for each apartment complex.
Chris, let me ask you a question though. The Schulz building in Lexington, obviously it's not in our jurisdiction, but it has street on Main and what is that? Washington? What is that?
Main and Walker, essentially.
Right.
Randolph and Walker.
My point is that it's business at both sides. It steps down. So how do you define basement? If street side is level on one side and also on the other, it's a different.
That could be problematic. And thankfully,
you address that?
I'm uncertain of any of those circumstances in Rockbridge County, as far as two public roads with access points on each of those roads.
You're talking about the Grand Piano Building?
Yeah,
That's
I
exactly
apologize.
what I'm
When I was saying Randolph, I'm following you now, because you have McCrum's
Right,
parking
yeah.
lot in the rear. I mean, both of those, I think, would be at street level. So that could be problematic. But I'm unaware of
In
any
that, it
similar
would-
situation.
That both of them would be considered street level 90%. That would be, they would, neither one would be considered.
I believe so. That is interesting. I did not.
The one that came to mind for me would be Blue Ridge Therapy. It's not actually a street, but the top half is kind of ground entry and the bottom is ground entry on the backside.
So that one's just a 2-story building. So that makes it a little bit easier. In that particular case, the ground level, the street level would have to remain 90% business use. And then that owner would have the ability as a permitted use to convert the second story into apartments.
even though it's ground level coming out that side, even though it's not a street, but it's
Yeah, no,
ground level.
it would be the ground. Yes, I'm confident on that one. Going by memory, I'm confident on that one. I think Ms. Huffman had something to add.
I think the planning commission had discussed the addressing of the property as being the street
Yes, that's
So-
certainly a discussion.
for the example in the city. The main level would be the one on Main Street because presumably that's how it's addressed.
That's a.
Right,
yes,
but in
that's-
in that example, if we had that situation in Rockbridge County, we would not want that to go residential because it's on 2,
I understand.
right? So.
Any other questions for Mr. Slade? All right, thank you, Mr. Sladen. At this point, we'll open up a public hearing. Has anyone signed up wishing to address the board? And is there anyone online? No, sir. Anyone present didn't have the opportunity to sign up? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Any other board discussion? And if not, is there a motion to approve the change as presented?
The-
All right, I'll get this. We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
All right, we can have a little bit of board discussion here, Ms. Ayers. What was your
Well,
question?
no, I just wondered in that situation, what would you do? Are you just going to allow residential on the other, if that existed in Rockbridge County, what would you do if we pass this?
I believe I would have to go back and look. I think there is a lot of merit to Ms. Huffman's comment of which street level is where the addressing is from. I would tell the citizen, the landowner, if you will, I'd have to do some additional research and get back with them. But I do not think that both of them would be considered that you could do both of them as apartments because one or the other is going to be, I mean, worst case scenario in that particular grand building that the backside of it could be converted into apartments and not the Main Street side. But it could very well be that neither one could be converted. I can't answer your question directly.
Sorry, Chris, I understand. I would hate for a business district to end up not being business on one road. But as you said, it doesn't seem to exist in Rockbridge County. We can't find an example of what you can see very
It's
plainly
actually-
in Lexington.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there are very few examples, I think, even in the city. But with that being said, we were sort of struggling with finding a basement level in a business zone to begin with,
All right.
which is unusual, obviously, in Rockbridge County.
Okay, I'm good.
Chris,
Mr.
Yes.
Day, go ahead.
where does the 90% come from?
That ratio was in other localities, and we thought it was important to have a core. The planning commission thought it was important to have a core commercial aspect, but also allow some flexibility if someone wanted to have an apartment in their 10% apartment, 90% business use.
And we're talking about square footage, I guess, of the building.
Yes,
90% of the square footage.
that's correct. Yes, the gross area is what it would be considered.
So what happens if it only comes out to 85 or 88%?
There's a variance process, but probably be hard pressed. They would be unable to do it.
Good. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Thank you, Mr. Sladen.
Thank you.
Next up, we have board comments. Anything for the good of the cause? Mr. Lyons, Ms. Ayers?
I would just say that Raro is building its shade structure, actually, with the timber framers. Starting, I believe the first day is Friday over the weekend and then Monday and Tuesday. So if you want to take advantage or spend the day out there helping or cooking or just coming out to see the progress, please do.
Mr.
Are the
Lewis?
Mullins bringing ice cream?
Oh, goodness, I'm sure they are.
You can't just show up for the ice cream.
Oh,
Mr. Lewis, you have anything for the board? Mr. Day?
Yes.
All right. Our next meeting will be April the 10th. Mr. Stu, do you have anything? All right, is there a motion to adjourn? So move. And a second?
Second,
All right, Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis? And Chair votes yes as well. Everyone be safe.